This video explains the different loading configurations available for the Hornet saw and reviews some considerations and best practices regarding loading material. Remember to follow all posted safety instructions. Every Hornet saw is equipped with a 15-foot in-feed pusher. Your saw may also have an auto-loading live deck, as shown here, which we will review later. Follow these guidelines when loading lumber on the in-feed pusher. The Hornet is designed to cut and mark boards stacked too high, as shown here. Always lay the boards on the wider surface and stack them so the edges are flush. Also push the lumber flush against the fence. Ensure that the boards are close to the pusher but not flush with it. If the pusher is too close or too far in relation to the longest lumber you intend to load, calibration of the pusher may be required. The in-feed pusher requires that you continue to manually load lumber on the pusher and against the fence after each cut, so it may be manipulated by the in-feed pusher. The Hornet is also available with an optional auto-loading live deck as shown here. For this example, we refer to the long side of the auto deck furthest from the in-feed pusher as the front side, and the side nearest the in-feed pusher as the back side. Load the lumber onto the live deck at the first chain tube on the back side, closest to the in-feed pusher, and position it so there is a 4 to 5 inch overhang. Like loading the in-feed pusher directly, it is best to load any stacked boards flush with one another and to ensure the pusher is calibrated for the right position in relation to the longest lumber you intend to process. It should not be flush against the pusher. Lumber should be loaded onto the auto-loading live deck in the order that the jobs will be processed. The material for the first cut should be closest to the in-feed pusher. Only load a maximum of 15 stacks on the live deck at a time. Note that lumber should always be loaded on the flat side. The only time lumber should be loaded on its edge is for cuts for a rake wall. The cut builder software on the HMI will indicate when this is necessary. How the boards are placed on either the in-feed pusher or the auto-loading live deck can also be affected by imperfections that may be on the board. Remember that any imperfections should fall within your company's guidelines. Any imperfections that fall out of these standards should be called. In this example, we're assuming the boards are 2x4s to make it easier to define which surface we're talking about. The figures will also be from the perspective of the front side of the auto-loading live deck or in-feed pusher. A crown is when a board curves towards the front or back when lying on the 4-inch side. Place a crown board onto the live deck so the curve is facing toward the front side or away from the edge printer and away from the fence on the in-feed pusher. Wane is a defect in the board where there is either bark or insufficient wood along an edge, like when a portion of a corner is missing or rounded off. If the wane is minor, try to position the board so the wane is facing toward the front side of the in-feed. The wane may cause issues with the printer or printed graphics. Warp is when the boards curve up or down when on its 4-inch side. Some people call this a bow in the board. Place warped boards onto the in-feed with the curve pointing up when possible. Avoid running any lumber with staples as it can potentially damage the Hornet printers. If the boards have multiple imperfections, use these tips to help decide on how to place the board. These are loading priorities for the imperfections. Number 1 is wane. Place wane so it is facing the front side of the in-feed, away from the bottom plate printer, and away from the saw. Number 2 is crown. Place crown so the curve is facing toward the front side of the in-feed. Finally, the third priority is warp. Place the board so the curve is pointing upwards. Regardless of the imperfections, always be mindful of the edge and face printers if installed. Never load a board with an imperfection placed in a way that can damage the nozzles. To recap, remember to cull poor quality lumber. Always keep in mind any imperfections that may damage the printers or cause the graphics to not properly print and lay the material accordingly. Always lay lumber on the larger dimension, so the 4-inch side of a 2x4, unless the cut builder software instructs otherwise for a special cut. The far edge should be flush against the fence if loading directly onto the in-feed pusher. If loading onto an auto-loading live deck, load the material for the first job at the first chain tube. If you have any further issues or questions, please contact MiTek Automation Support via phone or email.